Hello, welcome back to the Football Betting Tips and Strategies series. Before we start, I just want to make sure that all of you are following me on Instagram and have notifications turned on for the upcoming season to get live tips straight to your phone. Follow the Football Bank on Instagram. It's been a quiet off-season and it's definitely a good idea to take a break from betting in the summer months and go out, enjoy the weather, spend time with family and friends. But with less than a month to go until the start of the new season, one of the Football Bank fans on Instagram asked me to analyze a game from the 2021-2022 season. So, as I do, I looked into the game and performed the research that I would have done as I would do for a pre-match game. And let me tell you, this one was a tricky one to analyze, with overwhelming evidence favoring one side, until I spotted one very important thing. And it's a consideration which everyone needs to take into account when researching bets, and that is breaks. More specifically, international and winter breaks. If you're anything like me, you hate international and winter breaks. The leagues break up to play in meaningless international friendlies, or we have to go through the whole winter break for weeks without European football. And what's worse for a bettor is any momentum you have in the lead up to a break is broken. And there is a reason for that. From my own personal experience, I know that my success rate in calling the result of games is weaker in the game weeks following an international break. So let's take a look at the game in question and see why breaks can be an important factor in analysing a game. The game in question was played on the 7th of February 2022 in the Italian Serie A with Salernitana at home to Spezia. Looking at the form of both teams coming into the game, the home team won one game away from home against Verona and lost two games, one at home, one away, both against strong opposition. Spezia, the away team, won two games away from home, one against Genoa, one against Milan, and won one game at home against Sampdoria. Now, interestingly, if we focus only on the team's respective home and away form, then there is even more evidence for the Spezia win. Salernitana, in their last three home games, lost all three games. And not just lost, but they got battered. Now, you do have to take into consideration the strength of the opposition too. These games were against Juventus, Inter, and Lazio, powerhouses in the Italian league. However, in Spezia's last three away games, they also won those games. Fair enough, it was only by one goal, but they still won those three games. And two of them were against strong opposition in AC Milan and Napoli, and one was against weak opposition in Genoa, who were 19th at the time. So again, there's more evidence here that this should result in a Spezia win. Spezia were missing their starting left back Bastoni, but I wouldn't say that was a key player for them, so that shouldn't affect the analysis here. So surely, it should be a Spezia win. The form analysis seems to suggest so. This is where the concept of breaks in football can really mess with our standard approach to analysis. Usually, if we analyze a game, we'll look back at the last 3 or 4 games, or their last 3 home or away games, depending on where they're playing the upcoming game week. But if we look back, the form analysis we performed for the home team, where we talked about them losing their last 3 home games, 2 of those games were before the winter break. For the away team, Spezia, we spoke about how they had won their last 3 away games, 2 of which had come against strong opposition. But only 2 of those games were after the winter break. So in fact, out of their 3 away wins, we only really can consider 2 of them, and 1 was against strong opposition and 1 was against weak opposition. So what was, at the beginning of our analysis, overwhelming evidence in favor of the away win is starting to look less strong. You see, because the whole point of basing our analysis on form is that the team has momentum, whether physically or psychologically, and we expect that to continue. All of that momentum generated before the winter break will not necessarily continue after a break of 3 to 4 weeks. Another thing to consider with the winter break as well is signings in the winter transfer window. When we do our analysis based on form, we do it based on the team that played those games. But what if over the winter break a team has signed a star player? can we really use form evidence which is based on games without the new star player? This is especially true in the case of Salernitana. In the winter break, they signed Verdi on loan from Torino. And just look at what he did in this game.
Verdi's first attempt and a perfect debut. Simone Verdi, he's done it once, he's done it twice.
So, you see, Salernitana signed a new star player, and all that form analysis that we did didn't really come into play. Fair enough, the goals were, you could say, lucky with low expected goals, and that is reflected in the numbers. But when we're placing our analysis, we really have to be sure of the teams we're backing, because losses are worse than wins. So how do you deal with managing the break in momentum from international and winter breaks? Well, for international breaks, I usually find that this only affects the first game week after the international break. So you only have to apply this rule for 1 week. For the winter break, for those leagues which do have winter breaks, you should apply this rule for at least a few game weeks before we have a decent data set of the post-winter break season. And the rule is to revert to seasonal performance when analysing the game, as when you look over the longer term performance of a team, you can remove variables such as momentum more easily. Now, in the case of Salernitana, it's not the best example to give because their seasonal form was also quite poor, but the idea is that instead of looking at the recent form and seeing an easy Spezia win, when you looked at the seasonal form, you probably would have been dissuaded from placing the bet thinking it's a banker. All in all, like I said, it was quite unlucky for the Football Bank Benta who sent this in. The home team signed a new player who scored 2 amazing free kicks, and the expected goals would seem to suggest that Spezia were the dominant side and should have won the game. Nevertheless, I always try to pick crystal clear bets because, like I said, you can't afford to lose in this business. And looking at seasonal form instead of recent form because of winter breaks or international breaks would have prevented me and the Football Bank fan from making this bet and losing money. Thanks everyone for watching. As always, I really appreciate the support, and we just passed the 2,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So thank you everyone for the support. I'm really grateful for it. As I announced in the last video, we're going to be streaming for the upcoming season, so be sure that you drop into the live streams for that. You know, I'll be open to answering any questions you have, and hopefully we can make a lot of money together this upcoming season. So as always, take care and goodbye.